Hello, hello, how are you doing? I've got a very special guest today who's going to walk you through how to disagree more sensitively across cultures. This is an absolute essential for international senior managers. Don't miss this conversation. Let's crack on. Hello, Lindsay, how are you doing?
Hello, Anna. Thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Wonderful to have you here. And guys, we're so lucky to have Lindsay with us. I'm going to give a little introduction. Not that she needs it, but Lindsay McMahon is the CEO of All Ears English and is the co-host of the All Ears English podcast. The All Ears English podcast teaches English communication and global business skills to 1.9 million followers on Apple Podcasts and Spotify globally, and is downloaded 3.5 million times per month. That's incredible. And has been ranked as high as #1 in US education language courses. Lindsay and her team have been featured in Podcast Magazine, Language Magazine, and Forbes. So we're incredibly lucky to have Lindsay here today. Thank you so much for being here. And yes. Lindsay is coming on to talk to you about disagreeing in English. I guess, Lindsay, let's start with, why do you want to talk about this topic?
Oh, yeah. This is a fascinating topic, Anna, and I think it's important to add nuance to the conversation around disagreeing based on who we're talking to, based on where we're living and maybe doing business, because I've learned over my years of traveling, working abroad, and speaking in English, learning different languages, that it can vary a lot how people expect to receive negative feedback or how people expect to receive a no or a disagreement based on where we're from. And so today we want to give your listeners some resources, language-wise, some vocabulary, but also think a little bit about the nuances around culture.
You mentioned before we had this episode that you had a personal experience about this. Could you share a little bit with us?
Yeah, this was really interesting. So when I was 25, I was teaching English in Japan, as many of us have done, right? Those of us who are teaching English in our career have probably traveled the world and done this.
Yeah.
And I was living in Tokyo. I was working for a great school, a really successful school, a company called Eon. And one day I realized that my manager had been, manager was a Japanese woman, and my assistant manager was also Japanese. There were a handful of Japanese English teachers. And then there were 2 or 3 native teachers in the school. So we were a small business. I realized that I had missed many kind of pushbacks that had come from my Japanese manager that had completely flown over my head. And she had been speaking English to me. Her English wasn't great, but she had been speaking to me, kind of pushing back on my style of teaching and essentially disagreeing with me. But I had missed them over and over and over. And then all of a sudden, one day I learned that my students in that particular class were being reassigned, and they weren't happy with my class. They weren't, as there was something I was doing in that class that they weren't happy with. And then I was told what had happened, and I was learning about this so much later than everyone else. So the Japanese teacher the Japanese English teacher had to be kind of the cultural go-between and explain what had happened. And it was pretty jarring for me, and a little hurtful, because I thought, why didn't she just tell me? She did tell me. She did tell me, Anna, but I missed it. And so this is kind of the core of cultural differences. There are a couple of things that I would love to bring up around culture and things we want to think about when we decide how we're going to go about pushing back or disagreeing or kind of debating, just saying no, essentially. Right? Should I go in?
Please go into it. Yeah, that would be great.
All right. So 2 concepts that come to mind are high context culture or low context culture, and power distance. So context and power distance. When we come from a culture that is high context, the way people communicate relies on a shared history, nonverbal cues, implicit understanding, hierarchies, all the things that were maybe happening in that conversation that I didn't catch. I didn't get it. Native speakers at that time in the school were given kind of like we had a status at the school in a sense, and maybe there were issues around that as well. So that's hierarchy. Versus a low context culture where the message is in the words. It's direct, it's explicit. We find this to be more common in North America, in Northern Europe, maybe Scandinavia, where they'll just tell you. I actually wouldn't even say the US is that far on the extreme end because I think we can be a little indirect at times. What do you think about the UK? I mean, it's very hard, right, to generalize like this.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky because I was literally just thinking about when you said it, because
Yeah.
some of the feedback that I've had about British speakers in general is actually that we're some of the most difficult people to understand. So in a way, I think we
Yes.
kind of have that same thing as with the people from the US. It's like, yes, we
Yes.
can be direct, but there's also a lot that's not said. And
Yes.
lots of my clients find it very hard to work with British people because they're like, I don't get it. What are you saying? Do you like it or not? Are you happy or not? Like, just tell me. Whereas you speak with somebody from, for example, the Netherlands, and they're like, I don't like it. This is my opinion.
Right.
And
Right.
it can be, like you said, I love that adjective you use, jarring. It can be kind of, whoa, very direct. So yeah, it really depends. It's fascinating.
Yeah. It's really interesting. My partner works with a bunch of people from the UK, and I've heard a lot of stories on exactly this topic. You know, is the UK culture high context or low context? Somewhere in between, right? And again, I struggle with these kind of continuum and just having to put a number on an entire country because you've got personality in there, you've got relationships, you've got a lot of different things, but we do look to find some kind of measurement here, right? So you're right, confusing. The UK, the US are definitely confusing. So we have to kind of take cues and take clues from who we're talking to. But the other piece, Anna, that I'd love for your listeners to think about is power distance. So this research on power distance was done, I think, back in the 90s by a Dutch researcher, actually, named Hofstede. His work has been contested, so just throwing that out there. Your listeners can research this. But power distance is about how much a country respects hierarchies. So if you're in a country with high power distance, the feedback, the disagreements might be harder to detect. If someone who is, let's say, below you on a hierarchy and they're pushing back, they're disagreeing, we need to listen, put on a new set of ears and listen for different things, which is super interesting, I think.
It again comes back to this point you're making before about the nuances, and trying to pick up on those different things is really going to help you in a way communicate it in a different level and connect with people in a different level, right?
Exactly. And that also extends out to when we're going. So it's not just listening for knowing where someone might be from and listening for their way of disagreeing, but it's also delivering our own pushback or disagreement. And how do we wrap that up into the right words that's appropriate for who we're talking with or the scenario, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So, Lindsay, why don't we have a look at some different ways to disagree in English? And I know you've got 3 different ways that you are going to share with us. So shall we have a look at that and do maybe some role plays as well?
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's do it. We're going to show your listeners together today, Anna, how we can directly disagree, or we can disagree but save face, which might be appropriate in some parts of the world or working with certain people, or how we can delay and decide to disagree later. So we'll start first with directly disagreeing, right? Here's where the facts are the most important. We need to be super clear. We're in that executive meeting where just give me the facts, right? Just the facts, please.
Tell me how it is.
Exactly. And so the first phrase I'm going to give your listeners is just not necessarily. So this is a pushback. Again, I'm using that phrase. It's a slangy way of saying disagree, to push back to disagree. I'll go ahead and start the role play. So I think Facebook ads are the most efficient marketing tool these days.
Not necessarily. Have you seen last month's results?
Yeah, so that's pretty direct, wouldn't you say, Anna?
Oh, absolutely. No, it felt very unnatural for me, but yes, very direct.
Yeah. But again, in some parts of the world, even within your own country with certain coworkers that maybe have the personality, just even outside of culture, the personality for it, and they want that, this is how we might deliver that to them. So we're going to customize our language based on who we're talking to, right? The next one, Anna, is I'd have to disagree with that. I'd have to disagree with that. Now we're making it a little bit less direct by saying I would have to instead of I disagree with that. But it's still pretty direct, in my opinion.
Okay, let's have a look at this one then. And I'll try and be a little bit less grumpy with this one.
All right, here we go. So Tuesday.com is by far the best project management tool we've seen.
I'd have to disagree with that. Remember when we used Tascaro? Our efficiency was through the roof.
Yes. All right. So again, these phrases are the most direct. When you want to directly disagree, this is one way to do it. I think what we're trying to get at here, Anna, is a lot of ESL textbooks will just show you one or two ways to disagree. And we want to add nuance to the conversation today.
Definitely. Okay, should we look at the third one?
Yeah, let's look at the next category, right? So the next category is we want to disagree, but we want to save face, meaning the relationship is important, right? And in the first example, it doesn't mean the relationship wasn't important, but the idea is the relationship is maintained by being direct in the first category, right? But here we need to be a little softer and work to kind of maintain the relationship differently. So the first phrase is, I see where you're coming from, but. I like this one. I find myself using this middle category a lot.
Yes.
Do you?
Yes, love it.
Yeah.
My go-to.
It's your go-to. This is where we fall for sure. And so here it is. The best PTO policy would be 6 weeks off plus public holidays.
Okay, I see where you're coming from, Lindsay, but I also know that a policy like that might hurt our bottom line.
Nice. And I like how you added might. So that makes
Yes.
it even more, right? Just really saving the face a bit more. And that's, this is the comfort zone for a lot of us. Next one is fair point. What I would say is. So there's two phrases here. Here we go. We should focus on existing clients before expanding. Retention is more cost effective.
Okay, fair point. But what I would say is that growth also signals strength to investors.
Again, you are acknowledging that they've made a good point, and then you are essentially disagreeing, right?
Yeah.
But you're doing it in a very different way than the first category, the first bucket.
Definitely. And it's like you said, sometimes there are some relationships where you need to be a little bit sensitive. You don't want to rock the boat. And you don't want to use something that might be a little bit inflammatory and cause a reaction. So these are really nice ways to get across your point, but avoid any type of conflict or potential offense, for example.
You got it. Exactly. And then I wanted to give your listeners a third bucket, a third option, because frankly, sometimes you just want to delay or you want to avoid disagreeing for now. Maybe you have a big meeting coming up in a few minutes. You're tired. It's the end of the week. There's a lot of reasons why we might not want to disagree now in this moment. The first phrase your listeners can write down is, let's table that for now. Right? Very common business speak, right? We might be actually we disagree, but we just don't want to talk about it. We don't want to move forward. So for example, I think launching next quarter is too soon. We haven't validated the market yet.
Well, Lindsay, let's just table that for now and let's revisit it after we review the budget projections.
Yeah. So it also could literally just mean, this doesn't always mean you disagree, right? Just to be clear, sometimes it just means you don't want to talk about it, but it could be a way of just avoiding the disagreement conversation, the pushback. And the last one is we'll have to agree to disagree. I love this in social life or business. It works well. I still believe outsourcing the design will save us time and money.
Okay, fair enough, Lindsay. I think we'll have to agree to disagree on that one.
Exactly. Thank you for going through these role plays with me, Anna.
No, it was great. It's fun. I'd love to do that. And it's funny because for me, using some of those direct ones, being British, feels quite direct for me. And like you said, I kind of fit in that middle category there of recognizing people's objections, but still getting across my point of view. So love that. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for taking us through that. And as we wrap up, is there anything else you think is important to take away that you haven't mentioned already about this topic?
Yeah, I think that what we realize when we travel abroad, we do business abroad, is that people are nuanced, right? Culture is nuanced. Human beings are just not simple. And, I believe that the most important thing in communication is human connection. That is always the goal. And so adding nuance to this conversation around how to disagree is something I would, challenge your listeners to look at, and how thinking about who am I sitting at this table with? Where are they from? What are they like? What's their personality? And what is the right way in this moment to get across my disagreement, to push back and say no about something?
Great. There you go, guys. You've had your task from Lindsay. That's your objective, to go away and think about the next time you've got a big meeting with lots of people around the table, to try and be a little bit more conscious of that and think about how maybe you could improve that going forward if you've been struggling with it. Great. Yes. Lindsay, thank you so much. So where can people find you if they haven't come across your podcast and what you do? Where is the best place to find you?
Yes, thank you for asking, Anna. Absolutely. So your listeners can go ahead and just open the search bar again, wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you're listening right now, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go ahead and open the search bar and type in All Ears English, and the yellow will pop up. You'll see us there, and you can hit the follow button on the show. And we publish on All Ears English. We do publish 5 days a week. So it's a lot of good stuff coming out on a regular basis. And our motto is human connection. We focus on human connection through language learning.
There you go, guys. Thank you so much, Lindsay. It was a pleasure to have you on. Bye, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.